I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the willGather podcast. My guests today are Jason and Tricia Norton, founders of Discover Live. They are pioneers and experts of live virtual world travel. They have been virtually transporting people to amazing destinations and events around the world. They have worked with top Fortune 1000 companies, educators, senior living communities, as well as families and older adults and private customers in their home. Today, we talk about the transformative power of virtual and immersive travel, how our travel experiences shape and impact our lives. It can change us, how traveling enhances our understanding of different cultures and people, and the benefits of exposing ourselves to new experiences and perspectives. And when we step outside of our comfort zone and try something new, that's where the magic can happen, and why we want to engage in travel and new experiences. We learn how remote travel experiences offered by Discover Live can benefit people who may be limited in their ability to physically travel. And as caregivers, how we can use this as a connection tool with our loved ones and to reminisce about past experience and forge future conversation. We also look at how travel can bridge the gap between people, connecting us from various backgrounds and cultures, how we become more empathetic and compassionate towards others. And we talk all about how Discover Live works, where we can travel in the world, and what that experience is like through their certified and licensed tour guide as we embark on a journey of a lifetime. Here is my interview with Jason and Tricia. Hello, Jay and Trisha. Welcome. I've been just counting down the days for this conversation. We've been visiting a little bit before, and I've participated in Discover Live, and I'm so excited to talk about it. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us here.
Great to be here, Nicole.
It's exciting. And this is honestly, if I had to pick one thing in my whole life that brings me joy, it's travel. So the conversation today is not only personal for me, but I know personal for a lot of people out there in the community and the power of immersive travel. So I'm looking forward to sharing about that, to hear your perspective, more about your heart behind why you're doing what you're doing. And I'd love for you to share more about how Discover Live was created, your background, what prompted this passion to want to share that with people.
Sure. Both Trisha and I, we have different stories of why we're coming together on this one. Just let me talk a little bit about myself on my side. I think grow up, my grandfather was my hero. I mean, he was an adventurer at heart, always told me about all the stories that he brought back from different parts of the world. But one thing, as he got older, his ability to travel began to diminish, right? Just like everybody else. And his deteriorating health made it increasingly difficult for him to even just to leave his house and go to several blocks away to visit his friends. So sooner or later, he became more isolated. We all noticed this, a decline in his mood and the overall well-being. He felt the world was really closing up on him. And at that time, I was traveling quite a bit for work. And I remember one day I was walking along the Thames River in London. I decided to give my mom a Skype call because I knew she was with my grandfather. But instead of just talking to him, I also showed him just my surroundings, including the London Eye at that time that he didn't see before. That's when things started to change. My grandfather started to asking me to show him more along the river, told me about all those stories that while he was traveling in London, I didn't even get to hear. And why I absolutely had to try Indian food while I was in London. And so later, my mom told me that while we were on Skype, my grandfather's face was just lit up with so much joy. And he couldn't stop talking to others about what we were seeing together after the session. So at that time, I felt my grandfather, for once, just reconnected back to the world. And he began to gain his sense of purpose and wonder back. And at that time, I also realized that you don't have to physically travel to experience the world because one can experience it anywhere from anywhere using the technology, right? So that's kind of like what gave me the initial inspiration of Discover Life. So
Mm.
that's how, on my side, how everything started.
Yeah, and Trisha, how about for you?
Yeah, so Nicole, not too dissimilar. I mean, I think, Jay's story warms my heart, and I've heard it before because obviously that's really the foundation of this business. And it's really about what power travel can bring to people's lives. And so my personal story is really about the women in my life, and it's particularly on my mom's side of the family. My grandmother was the president of the Irish Social Club of Boston. And having moved over from Ireland herself with her husband, she really had a lot to do. And she serviced this whole community of Irish immigrants. And so she had connections with Aer Lingus at the time and was flying people back and forth and getting family members to have the opportunity to see each other and coordinating discounts so people could afford to get over to see their family. And my aunt, my mother's oldest sister, kind of developed a whole career out of her inspiration from her mother. And she was a travel agent. My uncle was part of that business with her. And they really traveled the world. As a young kid, hearing about them going to China, I just couldn't even imagine that they were doing that. And she would come back with stories and trinkets and all kinds of just amazing things that were fascinating as a young person. And kind of fast forward into the last decade, my aunt, she was in a senior living facility, a community, and really the only sense of joy that she had was travel. And it was sharing travel stories, it was travel events, which at this community weren't very elaborate. They were a little bit simplistic because they didn't have the services of Discover Live. But that's what really brought her around. And as her mental health deteriorated, we found that the only thing that would really light her up was to talk about her past travel and show her pictures of the trips that she and my uncle pulled together for the longest part of their lives. Today, my mom, who just turned 82, she has traveled her whole life and continues to as, an older adult. And at the age of 80, her birthday wish was to jump out of a plane. And so this sense of adventure is kind of running through our family. And it's all about new things and new opportunities and seeing the world differently and kind of pushing yourself to get out there and find and have these experiences. So travel is powerful, I think, is really my message. And Jay and I have these two stories that support that.
Yeah. And then how did you decide to come together? I'm just curious, how did you find each other?
Yeah, like Trisha and I, we used to work together in another company, and I just know, in order to do something big, it's just impossible to have one person to do it. I need a partner, and I look at my background, am I good at, what I'm not good at, and I was looking for somebody who can complement me, and Trisha is just perfect person. Knowing her from my previous job, knowing her expertise, we just think if we can partner up together, we can do something really big. So.
Yeah.
And also our passion is the same, very same as me. So I don't have to convince her, why we're doing this. And so it was quite natural for us to get together.
You guys are a great team. And those are the best teams when we complement each other in those ways, I think.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you spoke to the inspiration of why you created Discover Live. But on a personal level, was there a moment of travel or an experience you had that just completely shaped your lens on life or gave you that love, that bug, right, of travel and adventure? I think we always have those moments of, oh, that was it for me, where now I want to see more, and you got to fuel that fire.
I'm happy to answer this question. It stands out in my mind. It's so clear to me, Nicole, that it was my first trip to China. And having grown up in the suburbs of Boston, I really hadn't been to a lot of, rural villages. And this trip was with work. Both Jay and I have traveled quite a bit professionally. And this was many years ago. So it was China from, many, many years ago. And we were out in the remote villages for work. And I just remember thinking that I really had no idea that this existed. And this is the fact that I was staying in a lovely hotel, but there was no running water. People were bringing kind of jars of water to us if we needed to bathe or brush our teeth or have a drink. When we went out to the local restaurants, you were literally like choosing these local dishes that they kind of had on display in front of the restaurants. And that whole, process of eating local in China was just eye-opening. It was the people and the pride for what they were showing us, despite the fact that someone coming from a more suburban, area, well developed, might have looked at this differently and maybe even as less. But honestly, there was so much pride and love for what was being put in front of us as guests that it just made me realize, A, how lucky I am, and B, that the world has so much to offer. And that if this exists, how many other things and experiences like this are around the corner? And it made me realize that the world is really large, and that to see and experience as much as I wanted to, I really had to make it a priority. And so for me, that was a turning point. And every time I traveled for work professionally after that, I always added a couple days on the back end or the front end to just get out there and see things for what they really are, not just the inside of an office space or a fancy restaurant, but get out into the community and experience the world for all of its joys.
So many joys. Oh, my first experience, I think I was 17, and I went to Guatemala and El Salvador with almost like a medical team. We were bringing supplies and teaching about different hygiene practices and things like that. And it was incredible because I had never left the United States before that trip. And the people and the food and seeing the culture and the extreme poverty was eye-opening, and it gave me a heart for how big our world is. And I was in high school at that time, and when you're that age, you think that that's your world. Everything's such a big deal, the boyfriend that you have, it's like your world's going to end if something happens. And that trip for me made me realize the world is so big. I've got so many people I can meet in this world, and how incredible is that, and the stories and connection and all of that. So yeah, I thank you for sharing all about that. I can see that, and I'm so glad that it can transform lives and give us new perspective, which leads me into my next question on how do you think traveling enhances our understanding of different cultures and people?
Yeah, let me just comment on this one, Nicole. We can read books, we can watch TVs and watch videos, right? Learn from the school about a different culture and the people. But personally, I feel like we can really truly understand a different culture and the people until we immerse ourselves in them, until we interact with the locals and see the same thing from their perspectives and understand why. I feel travel allows us to challenge our assumptions and many biases that naturally just is existing in every one of us, and be more open-minded and appreciative towards our differences. I remember the first time I went to Mexico, and before I went to Mexico, and a lot of people that I know just saying like, hey, you have to protect yourself, and it's a very dangerous place, and blah blah blah. I went in there, worked with my coworkers over there, and walk on the streets, played soccer with my coworkers in their apartments. Everybody's just the same. It's the same as all the friends that I have here. And I feel like, a lot of the things that we hear may not be true.
Right.
Right. And when you're actually there and you actually see how they do different kind of things, it gives you a totally different perspective. I just feel like all of a sudden that I learned something new, that even despite of all those books that I read and all those videos and all those movies I watch, it's not true, So
Yeah.
to me, I just feel like, the true travel experience enhances our understanding of the different cultures of people in a very, very different way, at a very different level.
I think so too. media plays a role in lots of different ways. And when we see a headline, it doesn't give us the full picture, but it doesn't give us the greater picture of what is actually happening in communities or in stories at a real day-to-day level. So thank you for sharing about that.
Nicole, it's interesting because to that point, I had another travel experience that was really eye-opening that speaks to exactly what you're mentioning. And it was in Greece and it was during turmoil. And the hotel that I was staying at was just blocks away from a park. And I walked out that morning and I could see this little group of people in the back of the park, and it looked like they had a little fire going, and I wasn't really quite sure what I was looking at. And the next day, as I'm walking through the lobby of the hotel and I see all the global papers lined up, as you know, papers used to be a thing. And the headline and front page of a very well-respected newspaper had this picture and this caption about just the uprising in Greece. And I had seen that. And to me, it was a small little thing happening in a small little part of a small little park. And yet, you know, the media had really made it into a much bigger concern. And so experiencing it for yourself and really getting a chance to talk to people who are on the ground is a whole different level of education and an eye-opening experience, to say the least.
It is. And I've found too, there's people that, which is why I love social media or Instagram or having the virtual experience where people are in those walking the streets and interacting and eating the food, that share those daily stories or what's really happening in terms of culture and community and whatnot. And it gives us that glimpse into the real life and not just the headline, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like once you get to know the person at the personal level, really we will find more commonalities than differences, right? And where you're like on the bar, like in my case, when I was in Mexico and I was at a bar with the person that I was working with, and we start talking about our families and talking about our work, our passion. At the end of the day, in our food, it's the same. Like people love those things, like all those other things, whatever is going on, like all of a sudden you feel like it's so far away, right?
Right. The big picture is very similar. The details may be different, but the big picture is very similar.
When I was traveling with, I think I told you, my girlfriends, and we were visiting with different people, there was conversation, I think, politically. And it was so interesting because when you share food, when you share a drink with someone and you talk, you realize that you can talk about your perspectives, and we're all coming together and we can share that bond of wanting to learn something new, being open to hearing about what's happening, and talk about our families and where we went to school, and you realize just how much we share in that similar way. It just brings people together. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So along those lines, what are those benefits when we expose ourselves, right, to those, as we're talking about putting ourselves in situations, to those new experiences and perspectives?
So for me, I think one of the biggest benefits, and you kind of hit on this, Nicole, is how humbling it can be, right? That you think that your world is just so significant, especially as a teenager, like you said, in high school. And then you have these worldly experiences and you realize, wow, you know, there's a lot going on out there. And how I viewed things prior is not how I will view things going forward. Like there's a different lens that you have for what's significant and what's insignificant.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of like I think from a learning perspective, but then there's just the joys. Like it's just so wonderful to realize that there's so much out there. You know, I always think about the benefit of travel for people who have never done it. You know, underprivileged communities, underprivileged people, and quite frankly, privileged people, but people who have never really understood cultural significances and all of those wonders that exist there. And how once you have that perspective, the world feels so much more giving. It feels so much more exciting. It feels so much more relevant, and it just gives you a purpose. So even if you don't have travel planned for years, you've got some big trip coming up, but you're going to see some place you've never been before. And it could be 2 states away or, 2 continents away. You've got something to look forward to.
Yeah.
You've got something that's bringing you anticipation, something to talk about that makes you feel like you've got, something to contribute. And so it's just giving you that sense of the bigger picture and what all exists and the wonderment behind that.
I always say we need that hope of something to look forward to. I
Exactly.
do in my day to day. I do all the time.
One thing that Nicole and just add on to what Trisha was saying, for somebody who traveled quite a bit, and one thing that you see is, I believe like usually those people are more open-minded, and I'm a strong believer that the more you see, the more you know, and the more you do. And to me, that's probably is the biggest benefit, for people travel to have that kind of view, because I believe they're able to do more for, the broader population than, a smaller population, and they can impact more. So that's, to me, is, one of probably the biggest benefit for travel.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And Jay, I guess just to even expand on that, like thinking about like what you can do, right? It is that perspective. It is having that more worldly perspective, that your perspective then that you share with those around you is going to be different, right? It just intuitively will be different. And so you are able to do and share more, just having that more open-minded worldly knowledge.
Completely. So this is a two-sided question in that I want you to share what Discover Live is, how it impacts lives, and then the second part of that is, how do we step outside of our comfort zone and try something new if we haven't engaged with virtual travel before? I think it's important to overcome that, and I hope everyone looks into that and does that.
Yeah, so let me talk about Discover Live. So Discover Live is, in a very simple term, we have tour guides in many parts of the world, and then we use a platform similar to Zoom to take people on real-time, on-location travel experiences. So, our customers are, we started our service to the senior living communities back in 2017. And now our customers are also including the regular households, many corporations. Now, if you think about what we have been talking about, right? So we're really trying to maximize the benefit of our travel experiences, not only to, give a purpose and a hope and to the seniors so that they can still experience the different parts of the world, even though they're confined in a much smaller place. But also from the corporate standpoint, we are offering the cultural educations or cultural trainings just so that people know in this global economy with the global workforce, what does their culture really look like? Why they do things that they do, right? To give people a much more appreciation of the different types of cultures, because we believe, and a lot of our clients, they believe together with us, which is a much more inclusive employee base and workforce is much more productive and much more happier as well.
Yes.
In terms of like the comfort zone that you mentioned, quite honestly, like I was not born here. So when I first came to the States, everything was new. Everything, new environment, new language, new culture, new food, new people, like gosh, like everything's new. So I was able to make some friends very quickly to adapt into this new environment. And what I learned is, I think it's very important, until you step out of your comfort zone, you will never know what's possible. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't step out of my comfort zone, right? And I think this is, in a sense, deeply shaped who I am in terms of not afraid of trying new things or start up new business, right?
Yeah. That's really outside of comfort zones when you start the starting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn over to Trisha.
Yeah. So to expand on that, and Nicole, it's funny, I've never been asked this question before, but it's a really good one. Jay and I are so close to it that we don't even feel like there would be a barrier of comfort or discomfort because it's just so easy. But what I would say is this is a judgment-free zone, right? Travel and world experiences are personal and they are non-judgmental. right? It's all about deciding what interests you. And we are all over the world with our wonderful tour guides, and then signing up for a tour. And once you get there, whether it's a private tour or a semi-private or a more public tour, our team is there to greet you. We manage all of the technology, so it's as easy as signing into a Zoom link, like Jay mentioned. And then you're with our guides, who, quite frankly, they could not be more happy to see all these unique faces, and they welcome people who have never visited before. That is a gift to them, because they're able to share the pride and the love that they feel for their local region. And so the questions that are asked, whether they're educated or really, just very general, even basic, our guides welcome all of them, and it makes the tour better. And so we even say to people at the beginning, just ask away. You're live. You are essentially walking next to our guides in the streets or the temples or wherever you may be. Ask questions. This is your time to explore. And so it's just, we make it very, very easy. There should be no concern about joining a virtual trip. And the beauty of it, which I think is probably pretty clear, it's not the same cost as flying or traveling by train or by car. The security is the security of your own home or wherever you're tuning in from. And, the preparation is very, very minimal. You can do as much or as little as you want. It's a very easy way to get a big payback.
Oh, and I love that you talk about the judgment-free zone. We just get to show up. I had the privilege of joining one of the tours and going to Costa Rica. Thank you. Oh my gosh, I loved it.
You learn how to open a coconut?
Yeah, I saw that. I never knew wine opener. I mean, so great. That was so great. Well, a couple of thoughts on that. First, I have never been in a rainforest before, so being able to walk through the rainforest and see the beach right there, it just was so cool because it was something totally new for me. I've never been in that situation. And you guys started on time. You talked about the best practices, that questions, right? Having people share the questions was really, really fun. Hearing about like the history and about the country and what the weather was doing and what it's usually like, and the climate and the trees and the monkeys that I don't think we've actually saw a monkey, but someone else maybe had seen a monkey, and the birds, the vegetation that was there. I learned so much and felt like truly, as we're walking through, and the guide was amazing. He was energetic and he had a smile on his face, super dynamic. We got to watch the coconut be opened. He ran into some German visitors that were also on the beach, and that was really fun. So for anyone that is concerned, not that there would be concern, but just take the chance and try something new and explore, that there will not be any disappointment, I promise. So thank you for letting me join. It was really fun.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, we're glad you were there.
Yes. Yeah, it was so cool. And he was saying too, like normally it's sunny, and that day it looked a little misty. So it felt super like you're in the rainforest with all the moisture. Yeah.
The one thing, Nicole, like a lot of our tours are customized because it's a live tour, so you can decide a lot of things. So some people like are walking along the streets, and all of a sudden somebody spotted, hey, on the left side I saw a pastry shop. Can we all go there and check it out? Sure, let's all go.
Love that.
Yeah. How can you do that on TV, right? How can you do that on just watching a video?
Yeah, you can't. We're just at
You can't.
That's the fun part of travel.
Visiting all these places in a lifetime, you couldn't get to all these spots. And it's really interesting sometimes when we have people who get to experience, like you did, something that's very unique. And these are people who have gone to, the top locations, Paris, Rome, Florence, and they get into Costa Rica or a beautiful town in Slovenia. They're just blown away by how much that place has to offer, and just so unexpected that it would. And our guides, you hit the nail on the head, Nicole. We've got just wonderful guides, and they're smiling genuinely happy to be doing what they do. This is a passion for them. They're highly educated and they know their stuff. So it's it's all there for your benefit.
It is. So how do you find your guides? Is there a process that you go through so you have them ready to go?
Yeah, as a company who first started this whole live virtual travel experience, at the beginning, we had to train pretty much every one of those virtual guides because, guiding virtually and guiding in-person tours are totally different. Skill sets and different equipment they have to use, the process, and also from our customer standpoint, right? If we're working with a lot of the seniors and the older adults in the senior houses, the people in the memory care unit and people in the assisted living community, and also people in the independent living community, they're all different. So our guys have to be trained to deliver tours for the specific type of customers. And usually what we do is we have several ways for people to join us. One is obviously people just find us online and send us a message through our website. A lot of times we rely on two ways. So one is we're a affiliate member of WFAGA, which is the World Federation of Tour Guides Association. It's a very high quality tour guides organization. So we filter, the tour guides from that organization, just to making sure that all of our tour guides are high quality first, right? We also use a lot of the referral of our existing tour guides because they know what kind of criteria that we use to filter out the people who we wanted to train them, spend our resources, train them to get them ready to service our customers. So when we have those people who are interested, we usually go through a interview process just to get to know them a little better. There's certain criteria that we're looking for. And then when we think this person is ready, we usually provide some kind of training manual and then have this person to study it and then come back with what we call it demo qualification tour. During the qualification tour, a few people from our key operations experience team will be almost like a judge, look at those and then give everybody's feedback from holistic point of view, whether this tour is good enough to move forward, or it's not good enough, but there's a chance we can improve it, or we think it's too far away, we just don't want to have those tours. So the tour guide have to go through a pretty rigorous qualification and a training and a continuous training process in order for them to service our customers.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, when Jay talks about too far away, not location-wise, because we are all about remote locations and unique places. It's too far away as far as our expectations of what we need from a tour and a guide versus, what we're seeing in the qualification tour. So just
making sure that quality's there. Absolutely. So for family caregivers and older adults, right, not only in senior living communities, in home, what are ways that we can interact with Discover Live and use it as a tool for reminiscing, overcoming maybe some of those physical or mobility limitations? What are you seeing in that way?
Yeah, so I'm happy to start with that. So whether in a community or in home, we find that our tours bring people together. Obviously in a community, it brings those groups together, and we love to give customers, kind of special interest tours too, so that people can come together around a united interest. When it comes to in a home environment, we've seen a lot of families come together, and because of the nature of virtual, these families can be located around the world. And it's such a wonderful way to kind of bring people together to have an amazing experience. They kind of have a post chat and a prior and a post chat. So they all get to talk about what they saw. And some of our most, just our happiest moments in doing what we do have been the results of some of those tours where families share things that would not have surfaced if it wasn't for the platform. We actually had generations of a family on a tour once in Italy. It was all for the grandmother because she wanted to show people where her and the grandfather had met and, a few first dates. And while we were at one of the locations, the grandson actually said, "Oh my gosh, I was at a wedding there a few years ago." And the grandmother was, overjoyed. And we're pretty certain that that would not have surfaced if it wasn't for that opportunity. And so giving people that chance to come together, and certainly as it relates to reminiscing for the older adults, they get a chance to really shine and spark and have the kids kind of looking at them differently, the grandkids, their own kids. Wow, you actually did, grandma. And it's just such a wonderful thing to witness, because they're feeling the joy, and that their family is feeling happy too. So Jay, I'm sure you've got more to add there.
There's so many. I was just like, everything started coming through. I remember when very first time that we started to do some, at that time, we're not even offering service for payment yet. That was just like, some of the things that we're testing. And we just happened to have a friend who works for Disney. And we had a tour in the main street of Disney. And if you have been there, you're right next to it, right? Like the main street is probably no more than 15 minutes of walk.
Right.
We spent an entire hour walking 1/3 of that street, because every time, like when we stop somewhere, the audience is in the audience, right?
Yeah.
They're just, can you just stop here? You see that bench over there? Can you just close by? Gosh, like 40 years ago, that's where we had our lunch together. At that time I was like 2 kids, and do you see the mailbox in here? This is my son, like putting his like first postcard in there. And it's just like all those things started coming back for the people.
Yeah.
And we actually finished the tour, and we actually stayed there for another hour, just listening to all the stories.
It's so incredible. Jay, I love that one. That always makes me smile. That was one of the happiest moments. I'll never forget it too, because you and I felt like we had gone to Disney. If I remember correctly, it was like a Saturday morning, and it was like we had transported ourselves to Disney for the day, or at least the morning also. And it just made me think of another thing, Jay, because you mentioned the after conversation. One time I was lucky enough to be in person during one of our community tours, and there were about 20 people from the community who joined. And after the tour ended, everyone had a chance to just sit around and talk. And what I was watching were people who knew each other, some better than others, but all of them learning something that they didn't know. They were all sharing either trips that they had taken or places that they still wanted to experience. And all of those stories were forming these bonds and these relationships that, again, Nicole, I really feel deep in my heart that those would not have happened if it wasn't for the platform bringing that forward.
Right.
And so travel just unites people. It unites people.
Right. Like when we have if we have a series of traveling, the best gardens in spring all over the world, right? And just say like people have the similar interests, taking those tours afterwards. Who knows like how many friends they make just because of everybody doing this together. From all of the different places. I remember, it's during the pandemic, it was one older adult staying in one senior living community that was like totally locked up. This person used to have 5 other girlfriends, always take the cruise ship together. Now they cannot do this anymore. So basically what they decided to do is, okay, let's all go to Milan and visit their fashion district. Let's just spend an afternoon, like a Saturday afternoon all together. Let's travel again, right? So and I think that there's just so much benefit for people to actually travel, not just like sitting there and watching like a video together, because travel also have a lot of surprises. I remember, Trisha, like once we were having a tour in Peru, we have to walk through a demonstration crowd of people because people are demonstrating right in front of the president's palace. And then another time we were, it was funny. It was somebody's birthday, and our tour guide used to work in Sydney, in this what is that landmark building?
Oh, the Opera House.
Opera House. Sorry, my things in here.
I love
and
it. Group.
He happened to know the singer over there. So we're walking on the streets. The 6 girls came over here. And he literally stopped them and say, hey, you know, I have somebody who's having a birthday here. Can you sing a happy birthday song to this person?
Oh,
Oh, it was such a blast. Like that person is saying, oh, you know, it's such a blast.
oh, the real life stuff.
It's a surprise, right? It's a
Yeah.
surprise part of travel that you just never know what's gonna happen.
Right, right. And everything that we're describing here, just for your viewers, these are all virtual experiences. So we're not talking about these people being there in person. We're talking about our guides and what they're able to do to make these experiences come to life.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable. You know, we've had people take tours and come back to us weeks later and say, this is still with me. I'm still thinking about those things that I saw and the things that we uncovered and we talked about, just like real travel stays with you. I shouldn't say real, in-person travel stays with you. So does virtual travel. You're experiencing it.
Yeah.
You're engaging and interacting. It's not a passive situation where you're just watching someone else's experience. You are the center of that experience. It's magical.
And it's the only thing, maybe not only, I shouldn't say that. It hits on every facet in terms of an even sensory experience, right? So we've got visual, we can incorporate how we remember the food tasting, the music that we hear. It's something that we can, in conversation, really touch on every single facet of life, right? People, history, politics, food, I'm trying to think, music, you know, all the things, and be able to talk about that.
Even as simple as the clothing, right? I mean, when we're having
The
tours
fashion,
Tunisia, right? I mean, you see like people or like Saudi Arabia, the way how people dress, the people how like they worship, it's at the markets. And it's always fascinating just to go to a market to see what they're selling, what people are buying on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
It's all different.
It is. Are you seeing that people are incorporating it with loved ones that have dementia or Alzheimer's? Are they able to tap into, you know, spark some of those memories?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the travel experience, especially virtual travel experience, it stimulates the memories and it really allows them to remember the details of the past. Because a lot of people, they probably don't remember what happened yesterday, right? But those memories that they remember deeply, it was happening from the past. In a way, you know, that prevents further memory loss. And also, just like what Trisha was saying just now, many times after the tour, it provides a topic for conversation, no matter it's between the older adults themselves or between the older adults and their caregivers or with their families. That's very enjoyable for everybody involved in a way to fight, you know, the isolation and depression, because a lot of people, they're depressed, right? Yeah. And those are like the joyful moments for them to bring up. And for some of the things, I remember one of the tours that we did was for a older gentleman. He was 102 years old in New York City. And he actually fought alongside the Chinese army at that time during the World War II. We were having a Chinese New Year celebration tour. And that was like the first time that he actually see what that looks like ever since he left there, you know, after the World War II. And during that tour, he was telling us all those stories. And you can tell like he was so proud of like the accomplishments that he had, right? 102 years old. Can you believe it? I mean, that's incredible. Like, it's just making him feel good for what he remembers from the before.
Yeah. As caregivers, we also, and family, want to find ways we can connect with our loved one. I think sometimes when we pull that all the different generations together, some people might have more comfort level hanging out and doing all the things, and other people need a bridge to find that connection. And I think something like this is that bridge. You're able to participate, do that together. It alleviates some of that caregiver burden or burnout as we are trying to think of all the different things we can do to have ways to have that meaningful interaction and connection. So encouraging families to look for those tools that can do that.
Definitely, Nicole. And it keeps on giving. To your point, it is that bridge providing that connection and conversation, but it's conversation that keeps happening. Hey, do you remember we saw that on the tour? Or wow, wasn't that fun when, you know, we went back to the place that you had seen before? And we've seen people have photographs in front of them so that they're looking at pictures and then seeing those places again. And Yes, it's a
Mm,
bridge. That's a great way of referencing it.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times, like even for the caregivers, because we know how stressful the caregiver is. It's not an easy job, right? And then many times it's also almost like you're giving a break to the caregivers of the day as well. Just have
Yeah.
something fun,
Little
just like
respite. Yeah.
all of a sudden go somewhere in the world,
Mhm.
right? Somewhere sunny, somewhere that is fun, and experience it and come back, right?
Right,
People much
right.
more, lifted from their, mental standpoint.
Are you familiar with Anna Hall by chance? Do you know who Anna
No.
Hall is? Okay. So I'm
I've
bringing
heard,
up.
but yeah, I don't remember that.
Okay. So Anna Hall is the founder of the Purpose Equation. And the acronym that she uses is called MARS. So movement, adventure, rest. I think the last one is like synergy, maybe. But what I think of is the adventure piece that is so closely tied to our purpose. And so for me, we did a podcast together, but when we were talking all about purpose and discovering what my purpose was, travel was the number one thing that came out. And I know for so many people, that sense of adventure that we need in life doesn't end. There's no age limit on that. And we
Right.
can find that in ways and pull out that sense of adventure. And so being able to have ways to do that, no matter our mobility, our age, our circumstance, our finances, we're still able to participate in that. So, yeah, definitely
It,
tied to purpose.
the purpose is there, and we've even seen people kind of redefine their purpose. We've had a lot of experiences where we're getting first time travelers on our tours. These are people who have not had the opportunity to experience much outside of their local area, and it's a wonderful thing to see unfold, and the questions they have and the joy they have in asking them, and just the wonderment, and them coming back and saying, when are the next tours? I'm going to change my
Mm,
calendar so that I can be at all of the future tours, because they just loved it. Their purpose is changing,
yeah.
and it's giving them something different to be thinking and looking forward to.
But now we're getting everybody together and for a common purpose. And that purpose is not even entertainment, but it's
Right.
learning, right? Yeah. So there are many different purposes that we feel. And from the corporate client standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of just knowing another culture,
Mm-hmm.
again, that is not entertainment,
No,
right?
yeah.
It's learning, it's acclimation. So travel is a fantastic thing. I mean, that's why we love it so much, just
Yeah.
because every day we feel like we're accomplishing something, make
Oh,
something
so
happy
good.
for whatever purpose that they're looking for.
Right, right. Yeah. And it pulls out that empathy in us. We have compassion for others. There are so many ancillary benefits that come through.
So many, Nicole.
Hmm.
Yes. We often say that we have the best jobs in the world because we're out there, we're sharing this with people, we're bringing these experiences, we're on the forefront of finding these locations and these tour guides. And then whenever we have the time, we're able to actually tune in and be there
Hmm.
for the
Yeah, I mean,
experience. So,
I mean, right now, like you can see, like if you ask us, like we're in different places, so we know, like another part of the world, how they're celebrating Ramadan right now, right?
Mm.
And in other situations, we have to physically travel there. And a
Hmm.
good part of our job is we got to talk to so many people every day. We got to travel to different places every day,
Yeah.
but still come back home and I have dinner together with our
Oh,
family and share all of our stories with them.
that is best job in the whole world. Oh, it's been wonderful to hear you share, honestly and truly, and being able to experience it for myself makes me even more excited and just looking forward to telling everyone else about it. So, where can we learn more? How can we incorporate this into our lives in even greater ways? Tell us how we can do that.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is really just to get onto our website. It's www.discover.live, Live. And you will find our contact information. And I think that's probably the easiest way,
That's
really.
perfect. And you know what? The less complicated, the better. Then we just go to your
Right.
website. We won't get lost. We won't get lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I love visiting with you guys. We could talk about travel for days, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Stories,
We
yeah.
welcome that, Nicole. So whenever you want to talk about travel, just reach out to us.
Thank you. I will.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Nicole, for having
Nicole.
us here.
It's great being here. Keep doing the good things you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.